Now, before we move on to the State of the Union, I wanted to take a moment to discuss the gloomy state of the mainstream press. Now, it's no secret that network evening news continues to lose influence. The so-called big three networks, and ABC, NBC, and CBS, lost nearly 20 million viewers since 1980. And that's more than half of the audience that they once enjoyed. Now, the cable networks have picked up the slack, but despite lofty mottos like fair and balanced, partisan and divisive seems to be the name of this game. And news does take a backseat to spin and opinion, and you can barely hear the real issues over the shouting of the talking heads. Now, from 1983, 90% of the U.S. media was owned by 50 companies. Last year, that number shrank to 6. Just think about that. 6 mega corporations like GE and Disney owning 90% of the media that you consume. Now, of course, print journalism is no exception, struggling to stay relevant at a time when tweets, blogs, and online media floods through the gates, which the newspapers once kept. And it's not just influence, but revenues and readership that newspapers are losing. Now, it seems like there has been a transformation of sorts, from watchdog journalism to lapdog journalism. Corporate officials, war generals, lobbyists, senior administration officials are all taken at their word, treated with respect. Those who lack good standing with the establishment are marginalized, ridiculed. Just think of Occupy Wall Street, Ron Paul, Julian Assange, which of course brings me to WikiLeaks.
Light them all up.
202 traffic, 260s.
Come on, fire!
Now, the release of this video, the collateral damage video showing an Apache helicopter attack in Baghdad, ended the era when journalists were the ones to decide which leaks would see the light of day. When the video was released, the establishment press balked. We here at RT covered the story the day that it broke, and we put Julian Assange on air. At first, the other outlets stayed away from him. After all, Assange was described as a terrorist by our very own government. But it seems that market interests took over, and then everything changed. Before long, Julian Assange became a media darling, gracing the screens of the cable networks. NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News. Major publications even partnered up with WikiLeaks to catalog and help release countless previously secret documents. Now, it's no stretch of the imagination to say that Julian Assange is a somewhat controversial figure. He's been driven off the internet, deprived of funding, placed under house arrest, and all this as he fights extradition attempts over sexual allegations. But whether you love or hate the man, it's hard to deny that his actions and WikiLeaks forever changed the face of the media as we know it. Now, 2 years ago, we invited Mr. Assange to speak on air. And in about 2 months, we're going to bring him back. Starting in March, Julian Assange is going to host a 10-part series of interview programs on this network. Now, you can love it, you can hate it, you can watch it, you can even skip it. The decision is yours, the show is his. The topics are of his own choosing. So I found it a little bit odd to understand the headlines when I woke up this morning. The Kremlin's mouthpiece, selling out to the Russian government, a Kremlin pawn. The Cold War, Part 2? Now, it's funny, I didn't really see those kinds of headlines when the major papers worked with WikiLeaks to release information, nor do I recall allegations of Julian Assange as some sort of General Electric stooge after he appeared in MSNBC. But I guess as the saying goes, all's fair in love and war. And I suppose when you're bleeding dollars, viewers, and ratings, it's easier to throw mud at others than to clean up here at home.
Thank you for this award for the outstanding contribution to journalism. They say that telling the truth is no way to win friends. They say that the Australian people don't care for the truth. Well, they're wrong. The Australian people want to know the truth about war. They want to know who they can trust. They want to know how the world is shaped about them. They want to find a way through complexity and lies. Yes, our work has given us a lot of powerful enemies, but it has also given us good friends. It has brought out the best in people, courage, loyalty, compassion, and strength. And tonight, I want to thank you and the Walkley Foundation for showing these values, as journalists and as Australians, in standing by WikiLeaks in our hour of need, not in 5 years' time, but today, when it counts. And I want to thank all of those who have continued to stand by us, our sources, our donors, our defenders, people without whom we could do nothing. We, journalists are at our best when we share with activists and lawyers the goal of exposing illegality and wrongdoing, when we help to hold others to account. This award is a sign of encouragement to our people and other people who labour under difficult conditions in this task. Our lives have been threatened, attempts have been made to censor us, banks have attempted to shut off our financial lifeline. An unprecedented banking blockade has shown us that Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, the Bank of America and Western Union are mere instruments of Washington foreign policy. Censorship has, in this manner, been privatised. Powerful enemies are testing the waters to see how much they can get away with, seeing how they can abuse the system that they are integrated with to prevent scrutiny. Well, the answer is they can get away with too much. I expected the hate speech on Fox News, but not the calls by US senators for the extrajudicial assassination of myself and my staff. Neither did I expect that the United States would aggressively undermine its own constitution to persecute me and my organization. But I can understand the Washington elite's reaction. Washington is waging a war against the truth. It was, after all, the truths about Washington and their friends that we revealed. What I cannot understand is the craven behaviour of the Australian Prime Minister Julia Gillard. It is embarrassing. Does she really think that she can become Obama's deputy and then run off with his friends and his job in the manner that she did with Kevin Rudd and so many before him? It won't work this time. The US Constitution won't permit it. It is time Julia Gillard stopped sucking up to power and started using the power that she has to the benefit of the Australian people. This time last year, Julia Gillard commissioned an absurd whole-of-government task force against us, comprising of ASIO, ACIS, the Department of Defence, the Attorney General's Office and the Australian Federal Police. The Prime Minister falsely stated that WikiLeaks had acted illegally. The AFP had to take the embarrassing role of correcting her. The Attorney General stated that he was looking into cancelling my passport, why I was under dire circumstances. After pressure from the Australian people and the Australian media, McClellan decided not to, saying, not that it was wrong, but that it was helpful for tracing my movements. When I was awarded the Sydney Peace Prize for our work, the Australian High Commission refused to host it. These and other acts will be an infamous memory in Australian journalism. We are smeared and attacked by powerful groups from the United States, including the US State Department and the Bank of America. A grand jury in Washington has spent the best part of a year trying to indict me and our people for espionage. One of our alleged sources, the young intelligence analyst Bradley Manning, has been held in solitary confinement and under inhumane and degrading conditions. The UN Special Rapporteur for Torture and Amnesty International have equally been prevented from seeing him. I personally have spent over 350 days under house arrest. I have not been charged with any crime in any country, but my name is constantly smeared. Our supporters in the United States, in Great Britain and in Europe have been arrested en masse, with over 78 raids on various individuals. The reaction to WikiLeaks has demonstrated that, in the West, such attacks are no less vicious than in other parts of the world. They are simply more sophisticated. Washington has become an empire not only of force but of lies. The Australian government has refused to say whether it would block my extradition to the United States from Australia, but it has acknowledged that it has the political discretion to do so. The Gillard government has shown its true colours in relation to how it's handled US pressure on WikiLeaks. Australian journalists are courageous, the Australian population is supportive, but Julia Gillard is a cowardly Australian Prime Minister. As Australians, we shall not despair. As long as we can speak out, as long as we can publish, and as long as the internet remains free, we will continue to fight back armed with the truth.